yourself personally to keep the momentum going in these protests? Because I know some of the legislators are backing down now.
Yes, well, it's been great. We're seeing all throughout the day. I've been checking my phone and noticing all of these senators, even some co-sponsors, who are now saying, no, just kidding. No, we love the internet, and that's great. I absolutely hate politics. If you ask all the people here, we would all rather be working on our companies right now. Trust me, I would much rather be focusing on my startups now than dealing with politics.
Sure.
I hope we can go clean slate on these terrible bills, say goodbye to SOPA, say goodbye to PIPA, actually bring in some geeks who know what they're talking about to be there to write the bills. Lock the doors, don't let any lobbyists in, and actually get good legislation that will curb piracy and not destroy one of the healthiest parts of the U.S. economy.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Alexis. Appreciate that.
Okay, everyone. Because Reddit asked us to, we had talked about it, and one of my friends, actually, one of the partners of XKCD, a very popular website, actually suggested it to me. And he'd initially suggested it as just being Washington, D.C. IP addresses, so that just people in D.C. would see for a day what it would be like were these laws to come to fruition. I mentioned it to the Reddit team. The Reddit team thought about it, debated it, but it wasn't until the Reddit community actually said, hold on a second, you guys need to go dark for this. You need to make a bigger deal out of this because this matters. And we said, all right. The spirit of Reddit has always been, let the community do the hard stuff. We will create a great environment. Actually, Brad from Square Ventures talked about this. Our model, the way of doing business for so many tech startups now is to build great mechanisms. We love what happens when people get together and the best stuff bubbles up. And so we can create a great system and get out of their way. And so I don't know what's next. We're just going to continue to keep creating that great system.
But what message does it send by saying we are going to go dark?
We are going to do it? It says, it acknowledges the fact that if either one of these bills were law in 2005, Steve Huffman and I would have never been able to start Reddit. There would be no Reddit. So it seems only fitting that on a day that is so important to raise awareness for these two bills, that a site that could not have existed would go dark.
Do you worry, though, that people go to your site and start and say, you're not here?
No, not at all. The good news is this isn't just Reddit. It wasn't long thereafter either. There's so many other sites that have taken up the charge and said, you know what, no, this matters to us too. And it's not just the latest, greatest tech startup. These are content creators. Look, I think every top webcomic right now is also dark. These are artists who make their living online. They deal with piracy every day, but they make their living online and they know that this legislation is actually not in their best interest.
So what is the answer in terms of piracy, in terms of legislation to prevent piracy?
Really? Okay.
What's the answer?
Well, the answer is a combination. It's two things. One, it is to wipe out the legislation we're talking about right now, SOPA, just hard reset, to sort of quote Sony about that, and to actually say, if we're going to talk about this, we need to have technologists in the room who are guiding this. And really, I think most Americans would agree that if you were to decide between solving the problem with either more government or more private sector innovation, most Americans would agree that generally the private sector comes up with the better solutions. Look at Netflix. Look at that innovation as a solution against piracy, which is unfortunately going to be an inherent evil within a system that is as free and fair and wonderful as the internet. But we can work to curb it. We just can't work to curb it with lobbyists in the room. All right, I have to take one more question. Oh, Alexis Ohanian. ALEXISOHANIAN, no apostrophe.
And what's your position?
I'm co-founder of Reddit. I'm currently a board member now and just general tech entrepreneur.
Fantastic. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, guys.
Can you sum up why did you decide to go dark today?
I'm not going to do it in French, though. You don't want to hear that. Because, well, it started because Reddit suggested it. Because it needed to happen, if only to show that the opportunity that Steve and I had to start Reddit could not have happened if these bills were law. It seems kind of ridiculous that we have supporters of these bills, that is senators and representatives, who are still using their YouTube channels to broadcast their messages, who are still using their Twitter accounts to send out tweets. The irony of that is not lost on anyone who appreciates what awful legislation this is. So we just figured we had no choice.
Why wouldn't you be able to create your startup with those bills?
Because, okay, sorry, this is really the last question. So the problem with the language as it is right now is it is so incredibly vague. Again, when you have lobbyists writing bills and not technologists, this thing sort of starts to happen. Reddit could almost be classified as a search engine. And further down the list, you start to look at the repercussions if any US site has to deal with user-generated content that is deemed illegal. The onus is now placed on the startup. And this isn't just the Googles of the world or the Reddits of the world. This is on the startup in the cafe down the street or in General Assembly here in New York that is deciding to start something new, deciding to create a business, create jobs, create innovation, and all of a sudden has to realize that their first 6 hires need to be a team to deal with inbound legal requests. We already see abuse of the DMCA. So we already know that it's abused. And now we're being told by a Congress with last time I checked, lower approval ratings than Mars Needs Moms, that we're being told, trust us, we got this covered, this won't be abused. Frankly, I don't. And my trust is in the private sector and in Americans to figure this all out. So thank you. Unfortunately, I have to go talk to you guys.
Yeah,
Oh, hello.
Hi,
Oh, hey, Julian.
I'm Julianne.
Hello. Oh, and you guys should email me. Contact at Alexis Ohanian. No. This is for everyone who is here. Seriously. If there are no people in this audience, it is 12 clowns standing on a stage with microphones, and no one gives a damn.
Alexis.
Yes.
Would you be interested in doing a march down to Times Square to share and partake all this beautiful information to the masses?
I would love to, but I have to do press stuff for literally the rest of the day. All right.
We'll be over there.
You guys do what you got to do. I'll do the mainstream stuff. With our powers combined, we'll have Captain Planet.
Okay, so we'll just jump right in.
Okay.
The SOPA and PIPA have sparked huge controversy, but even opponents of the bill both sides tend to agree that protecting content is important, but that's the way the law is written. That's the problem. What's so bad about this law?
Oh, wow. You summed that up perfectly. Yes. As a copyright holder myself, I'm very interested in protecting the rights of copyright holders. But the problem is this legislation was written by lobbyists, not technologists. And so the solutions that are proposed and the burdens that are placed on tech companies are absolutely untenable. And what's nice about the reaction we've seen here is that, as I mentioned earlier, despite all of the problems that are affecting America right now, whether it's unemployment, whether it's deficit, Congress can't agree on anything at all. But $94 million showed up in Hollywood lobbying money last year, and you had Democrats and Republicans lining up to co-sponsor it. Something is wrong in Washington when this is the thing that unifies. When lobbying dollars to get a law passed is what unifies a legislature, because they are beholden to the electorate, and this is not in our best interest.
So we've already seen one of the most controversial parts of SOPA removed, the domain blocking provision, which sparked a lot of the controversy in the beginning.
Yes.
So is that enough? Is there anything that can be done to sort of salvage this bill, or do you feel it really needs to be started over from square one if there is a law at all?
This was these were such terrible bills to begin with. All of the hatchet jobs that have gone to try to remove it and hack away at it to make it somewhat savable, it's not. It's not at all. We need to start absolutely fresh and actually have technologists there writing this legislation along with the government. Let's lock out the lobbyists. Let's just have people who understand. Let's have the experts in the room, right? If any one of us were going to consult, let's say any one of us were going to go under the knife for surgery, right? We would want to consult as many experts as we could before performing the operation. And right now, we haven't had a single expert in the room. And all I'm asking for is to have someone holding a scalpel who actually knows how the human body works. That metaphor is about the internet, by the way.
So I have the protest here today kind of galvanizing the New York tech community. Reddit was one of the sites that participated in a site blackout on Wikipedia and Craigslist. What do you hope to achieve with these kinds of actions?
This is an interesting thing. I really have... I'm the one on the other end of the microphone, so it might give the false impression that I actually have some kind of agenda for all this. My ultimate goal is to see the internet not get destroyed. But the agenda is being dictated by the American people. The agenda is being dictated by the people who come out to events like this, who tell their friends about this, who call their senators and representatives. So while this has been a great victory, it's only the beginning. And I don't know where it's going from here. That's the magic of it. The way that we've run our companies in the tech industry is we are never really sure what's going to happen in the next couple of weeks, because that's how quickly things innovate and things change. We just know we're always marching towards progress. You'd be really hard pressed in the tech industry to just take something that's formulaic and replace it over and over again and expect that would continue to work. I know it works for like Fast and the Furious, but in the tech sector, that sort of thing doesn't count as innovation.
Tech companies have been working really hard to make people aware of it, and blackouts being part of that, get people involved and contacting their representatives. How have you felt about the reaction from users of Reddit and of other internet properties?
Oh, I'm enthralled. I mean, what's great is it is not just the massive sites we can't live without, like Wikipedia and Google, but it's small sites. Everyone who has a blog, everyone who is starting up something online and cares about this is showing support. And what may have been derided as slacktivism, I think can no longer be called such. I was explaining this a little earlier. As a technologist, I think about things in geeky ways, but imagine a tech adoption curve, right? We have the early adopters at the front. They're the ones who are the first ones in line for the new iPhone. Any idea is the same way. You have activists who are out here marching. They're the early adopters of an idea. But for something to actually change, for something to actually make a difference, it has to hit that big part of the bell curve. It has to hit everyone else. And 30, 40 years ago, when we saw social change happening, you had to have a number of those people in the middle bell curve saying, you know what, something needs to happen. Now we just have tools for people to like, to retweet, to vote up. And they get derided as slacktivists just because we can actually see a change in their behavior. I think that's just ridiculous. No one would have called someone during earlier social movements who simply had a conversation at the dinner table saying that they cared about something as slacktivists. It's just now we actually can see it. And it happens in real time. And when nothing starts happening in real time, we start seeing serious change.
You and many other opponents have said that it's legislators, people sitting in rooms in Congress, people don't know enough about the internet trying to draft up these sorts of bills. So who do you think should be involved in this kind of legislation?
Well, what's interesting is if you watch the House Judiciary Committee meeting, you've got folks like Representative Polis out of Colorado, who is vehemently opposed to SOPA. And in his discussion, he articulates why. And it's so shocking to see this happening. And then you read his bio, and you see that he was a tech entrepreneur himself. And he's actually an avid gamer, too. He actually understands what he's writing about. We need more representatives to either know what they're talking about or be willing to concede that they are not experts and they need to bring them in. Our interests are actually aligned. We want to curb piracy. Piracy is not good for business. We just happen to believe that we don't need big government muddling around in things it does not understand. And at the end of the day, the best innovation, the best battle against piracy is probably going to come from a brilliant entrepreneur. Hopefully there was one here in the audience today. Things like Netflix are great examples of ways to combat piracy through innovation. Now we need good legislation to help that, but I don't think that's the solution we need to rely on.
Alexis,
can I ask you something real quick?
Can you wait until we're done?
I want, because he actually mentioned something about artists and piracy. Do you really think this is about piracy? Because I'm an artist.
Yes.
I don't think this is about piracy any more than the Patriot Act was about protecting people's rights.
This is lobbying dollars. This is trying to save, this is 5 minutes. This is trying to save an industry through legislation, not innovation. And what's frustrating is, so according to last year's revenue numbers for Hollywood, 2/3 of the money that Hollywood made was through channels that had once deemed a tragedy. It was through channels that it had once said would put it out of business. But now that money is coming from all the things that it said would put it out of business. It's just technological innovation. And you know, I have so many friends, particularly in the webcomic community. These are the most popular. These are webcomics. Forget the Sunday paper. These are comics. These are artists who make their living off of material that is their intellectual property. They didn't have to hustle their way into a Sunday comic section. They just put their comic online.
Like the oatmeal.
Like the oatmeal. Like XKCD. These are webcomics. Do not trivialize them. That have millions, literally millions of viewers every day, and every one of them stands in opposition. As artists, as creatives, as copyright owners, every one of them stands in opposition today against these bills because they understand the technology they're working with. They're not trying to legislate against it, they're trying to innovate with it. Yes.
I just have one more question just to finish this up.
It's not a pressure.
Thanks.
Sorry.
It's all right.
Do you think that today's protest and the other backlash against SOPA will be enough to stop the bill from passing into law?
I think this is just the beginning. I think there is this incredible reinforcement cycle that happens when you start to see hard work bear fruits. You know, in the startup world, there is no better feeling than actually seeing traffic on your site, people signing up for it. I remember when Steve and I were sitting in that apartment, and the first couple of people started submitting links to Reddit, and we've come a long way from there. But it's this incredibly reinforcing cycle, and it's so powerful once it starts to gain momentum. I think we're just starting to get traction.
Can you see your name again and your title, please?
My name is Alexis, Alexis Ohanian, Ohanian, co-founder of Reddit.com, currently on the board, and just general tech advocate for New York City.
But you do understand that there's something to do here, like in some way, something has to be regulated. Content has to be regulated.
And that's why we have laws like the DMCA, which right now is enforced all the time. In fact, sometimes in instances, there's a great Ars Technica article explaining how Warner Brothers issued DMCA takedown notices for files they claim they never even saw. Now, if we see something like the DMCA they already getting abused? Hearing something from Congress that basically amounts to, oh, don't worry, trust us, this won't get abused, and yet replaces a loaded gun with an armed nuclear warhead, I get nervous.
Are you planning on talking to Congress at all? Was that supposed to happen?
That was supposed to happen today. So a bunch of us were supposed to come in. Representative Issa basically listened, well, Representative Chaffetz as well sort of led the rallying cry for bring in the nerds, if you remember the House Judiciary Committee meeting. And so a number of us were signed up, we were going to come down to DC, and a few days ago they said, don't worry, we're not coming because SOPA has been so battled by the American people that these representatives don't want to touch it anymore. It's been shelved. It hasn't been killed, but it's been shelved, and there's all kinds of DC jargon that I don't understand. But as far as I'm concerned, PIPA is the current threat, but we're not even going to stop there.
Are you going to talk to them about PIPA? Or
if they'll listen to me. I mean, so far so good though. The champions we have, the few champions we have in Congress have been listening. They're the ones who are clamoring to bring in the experts. And, you know, the American people are ultimately the bosses here. Let's not forget that. I don't care how many lobbying dollars you have, we still at the end of the day are the ones who vote these people in and out of office. All right. Okay, how are we doing? Okay, I have to go on Al Jazeera English from like a cafe somewhere that has a Wi-Fi connection. Okay, I'm sorry. But please, I'm at KN0thing on the Twitters. I'm on Google Plus, even though no one else is. Facebook, email contact at AlexisOhanian.com. No, thank all of you. Seriously, none of this shit would matter if there weren't actually people behind it. And if Steve and I learned anything from Reddit, it's that for those first 3 weeks, it was the two of us, lonely as hell, because it was just us and then occasionally some games of World of Warcraft, trying to make a site full of users who cared. And it's really hard to find all the good content on the internet when you're two guys in an apartment. So we learned back in 2005 that this can't be done without a fuck ton of people helping. Oh, you're gonna have to censor that. Alright, the FCC's not here, so we're okay. Alright, anyway, thank you guys so much. Seriously, thank you.
Thank you.
Let's keep it up. All right.
Watch this.
Rock on, guys.
It's good seeing you again, man. Let's go.
Oh, hey!